Chapter 6, Part 1 of Bigger. Tyler gobbled 3 bites from one of his tins of meat, ate a biscuit, licked up the leftover crumbs from the parcel Aunt Margaret had wrapped the cake in, then searched around his campsite for signs of the dog's footprints. He couldn't find any. Tyler frowned. The ground was dry, he observed, and covered with grass and leaves. Under such conditions, maybe it wasn't a surprise the animal hadn't left any clue that he had shown up last night. Or did I imagine the whole thing? Tyler asked himself. It gave him a spooked feeling to realize there was no way he could prove that a dog had lain across the fire from him last night, that he hadn't dreamed how the bushes parted, how he had been transfixed in the gaze of those strange eyes, one brown, one blue. Then he remembered. He had seen the dog snap up those chicken bones, wolf them down without even a belch. Well then, when he searched for the chicken bones, there were none to be found anywhere, not even a scrap big enough for an ant to haul away. So it was true. Had he seen what he thought he had seen? Hadn't dreamed a jot or a tittle of it. Tyler couldn't decide if that discovery pleased or scared him. Was it going to be the same ordeal each night when he made camp, that the animal would skulk around out there in the darkness only to come creeping closer as the fire died down? On a journey that was going to cover so many miles and last so many weeks, such suspense would be awfully hard for a person's nerves. Tyler got a drink of water from the creek, thinking, as he did, so how sweet a cup of Calico's warm, fresh milk would taste right now. Whoa! To recollect such small, homely details would be the same as looking over his shoulder, which he promised himself not to do either. He'd think only of the future, of knocking off 30 miles or so each day, of marking X's off the back side of his map, above the spot where the stranger had scribbled, "Good luck." He glanced around once, pushed dirt over the fire with the side of his shoe to make sure it was quailed, then loaded his pack on his back. He searched again, half superstitiously, for a pair of glowing eyes hidden far back in the bushes, but saw nothing at all. It was time to go. His 3rd day on the road was about to begin. As he walked along, Tyler felt peeved that Clayton's remark yesterday morning still rankled him. You must be daft, going off to look for somebody who's dead or don't want to be found. But what did Clayton know? Clayton, who had never done a bold thing in his whole life, who'd been his mama's darling, brown-eyed baby boy till his hair turned gray. Of course Papa wanted to be found. Halfway through the morning, Tyler saw a cabin set far back from the road, one rather like his own on Sweet Creek. If it had been a fine fancy house like some of the ones he'd seen in New Hope, he wouldn't have stopped. But since it was a familiar sort of place, common, a bit in need of repairs, he'd decided he'd take a chance. Uncle Matt had warned that the tins of meat wouldn't last forever, that he'd have to figure out other ways to eat. He'd hinted mooching might be one solution. Begging didn't appeal much to Tyler, but if he offered to do chores for folks as he traveled along, hoe a garden, milk a cow, shovel out a chicken house, why maybe he could earn himself a good home-cooked meal now and then. When he knocked at the door of the little cabin, however, there was no answer. Then, from around the corner, he heard the sound of someone chopping wood. He found an old woman there doing up some kindling while a few thin chickens pecked listlessly at the bare dirt around her feet. She jumped back when she glanced up to see him watching her, and laid a trembling hand across her breast. "Don't mean to give you a scare, ma'am," Tyler apologized, "but when I knocked on your door and didn't get an answer, I came around back." The old woman sighed and mopped her forehead with a corner of the ragged gray shawl that hung about her narrow shoulders. "This isn't my regular job, but the old man has been down a long time. It was a matter of me doing it or it not getting done, she said, tucking a wisp of hair behind her ear. If you want an hour's worth of work, I can pay you with a meal, she offered, holding out the axe. But if it's money you want, you'll be out of luck. I got no money for you to steal, no mule, no horse either. Tyler laid his bundle and took the axe from her. Sounds like a fair trade to me, ma'am, he agreed, pleased at how easily the deal had been made. And before she had gotten to the back door, he had finished the chunk of pine she'd been struggling with. Why had she thought he'd steal her money, mule, or horse? He wondered. Did 3 days gone from home make him look like some sort of criminal? He stacked all the cut wood neatly, like Papa had taught him, and when it seemed that he had worked about an hour, he went to the back door. He pointed to the wood stack. Does that look about right to you, ma'am? He asked. Right enough, the old woman agreed, and let him pass through into her kitchen. Son, you gave me a bad start a while ago, she told him. Since the war ended, folks say the country's been overrun by thieves. Scalawags is what they're calling 'em, and I was scared you might be one of 'em, come to rob me and my old man of what little we got left. No, ma'am, I'm not a scalawag, and I don't aim to rob nobody, Tyler said. Although he hadn't meant to tell her about his journey, that's exactly what he found himself doing over a bowl of chicken soup, which was so thin he decided the chicken had hardly got its feet wet as it ran through the broth. He told her how brave Joe Shelby was, how Papa had believed heart and soul in the war, that he had probably decided to follow the general all the way to Mexico, not realizing how much he was missed and needed back home. Might be your papa is dead like so many others, the old woman observed. Her voice was as dry and lifeless as corn husk in a November wind. So many people, Mama, Aunt Margaret, Cousin Clayton, said the same thing. Your papa might be dead, and if that was the only end, as if that was the only end they could imagine for him. I heard men were killed by the tens of hundreds in the war, she went on, and were laid up in fields and along fences like cordwood. Even worse, when those boys were buried, it wasn't each to his own grave, as any loving mother would pray, but their bodies were just covered over in a ditch like pigs that died of the plague. Tyler doubted her words. It wasn't possible men would kill each other in such numbers, then stack up the bodies as if they were no different than the wood he'd just finished stacking outside. Most certainly they wouldn't be treated like dead pigs. People made up such tales because they didn't know any better. Why an old woman would make up such stories, however, Tyler couldn't explain to himself. In a corner of the kitchen, the old man she'd spoken of slept on a narrow bed. His flesh yellowed and stretched like parchment over his skull. His mouth agape like a dark hole in his face, his eyes sunk deep in their sockets. He's waiting for the end, she explained simply. He's had a long life, and when he's gone, I don't aim to linger here myself. You see, our boys, Dolph and Joshua, both fell in the war. Now the old man doesn't care if he lives or not, and truth to tell, my sentiments are the same. She sighed. I say it's only fitting Lincoln himself went down. Lincoln himself? Tyler echoed, puzzled. You didn't hear? The woman asked, turning rheumy eyes on him. It was on Friday, only a week after the war ended. Someone shot him, an actor, I heard, and he died the very next day. End of Chapter 6, Part 1. Top of page 50.